Padakamalam, Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha, Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tantam Sajeevam, Sadvaitam Sapadutam Parijana Setam, Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita, Shri Shakarandavascha, Shri Guru. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostute. Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripre Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyata Deshitarni Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langhayate Giram Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to our Gita Sandesh series. Today we will talk about our founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, Srila Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Prabhupada's life is quite extraordinary. And when we understand all the trials and tribulations of a great personality, we recognize that they are actually pure devotees of the Lord. Because it is only the pure devotees of the Lord who can undertake that many struggles in their life in the process of introducing Krishna. Not just to devotees in India, but also to those who have never heard the name Krishna overseas. So Srila Prabhupada appeared in this world in Calcutta, and his appearance day is the day right after Janmashtami. So if Krishna appeared at midnight, then Prabhupada appeared the following day. The following day is celebrated by Nanda Maharaj as Nandotsav, because that's the day when they actually celebrate Krishna's appearance day, although he appears in the middle of the night. So Prabhupada was born on Nandotsav. It's the annual festival day celebrating the Lord's arrival. And this happened in 1896 in Kolkata. Both his parents were very pious. His father was anyway a practicing Vaishnava. His father used to worship Shri Radha Krishna deities at home. And also it is said that his father had the good fortune of hosting and inviting many great souls, many holy men into the residence, and he would feed them prasadam, and he would always ask such holy men to bless his son, so that his son could be a great devotee of Srimati Radharani. So this is the only blessing that his father would seek, that his son should be a great devotee of Srimati Radharani. And Prabhupada conducts his first Ratha Yatra. Ratha Yatra is the procession of Lord Jagannath, Lord Baladev, and Subhadra Devi on a cart. So it's called a cart festival, celebrated in Puri every year, and because of Prabhupada, it has been popularized all over the world. So all over the world in ISKCON, the deities of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra are pulled on a chariot, bringing the Lord's mercy upon anybody who touches the rope to which the Ratha is hooked to. So at a very young age, at the age of 5 or 6, his father bought him a very small cart. And on the cart, Srila Prabhupada kept small deities of Jagannath. And Prabhupada organized his first Rath Yatra when he was a mere child. So you could say Prabhupada's life centered around festivals and Krishna. At the time of his birth, an astrologer had told his father that this personality, this little baby, would become a great personality in the future, that he would travel overseas at the age of 70. And at the age of 70, he would start establishing 108 temples around the world. So that's what the astrologer had told Srila Prabhupada's father, that this is not an ordinary child, it's an extraordinary child. But then, imagine doing something extraordinary after the age of 70, when most people would retire and call it a day and say, yes, and now I'm just waiting for the time to come. So Prabhupada studied in Calcutta. At that time, India was under the British Raj. And Prabhupada was very much attracted by Mahatma Gandhi's non-cooperation movement. He attended the Scottish Church College. He got his degree, but then as a mark of protest, he refused to accept the diploma to protest against the British rule. So after he gets his degree, his father, through a friend, Dr. Bose, gets Srila Prabhupada the position as a manager in a chemical company. So Prabhupada starts working in a chemist store, right? Like a pharmacy. So later on in 1918, which would make Prabhupada 22, he was married, and shortly thereafter, he started a family. Prabhupada's wife's name was Radharani. And so in 1918, he gets married. And 4 years later, in 1922, he meets his spiritual master, his guru, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada, in 1922, in a place called the Ulta Danga Junction. And in his very first meeting, actually, Prabhupada was very reluctant to go meet any sadhus, because his father would invite so many holy men into the house. Prabhupada had personal experience observing some of the sadhus who were wearing sadhu vastra but were not engaged in proper conduct. Some of them would smoke like this, some of them would lie, So Prabhupada was not impressed looking at sadhus, holy men, sannyasis. So he told his friend, his college friend, I have no interest in meeting any holy men. I've seen enough of them in my life and I don't care for them. I don't trust them. That was Prabhupada's mood because of what he had witnessed. Somehow or the other, his friend coaxed him saying, look, this is a great philosopher that you're going to meet. He's like a pakka sannyasi. You will not be able to find anything wrong in him. So Prabhupada agreed because his friend said, come on, let's go listen to a class. So they go to the rooftop of this Ulta Danga building. And there, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was giving a class. People were sitting on the rooftop listening to Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. And at that time, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was a very famous scholar, religious man, and he had founded the Gaudiya Math. 64 Gaudiya Maths Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada had established. That's an astounding number. That would have been, late 1800s, early 1900s. So 64 Gaudiya Maths were established by Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master. So his eyes fell on Srila Prabhupada. The first words out of the mouth of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is that you are an educated man. Why don't you preach the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world? You should make the teachings of Mahaprabhu accessible to the West. You should go preach in English. And Prabhupada asked him a question, because this is the first time he's meeting him, and immediately an instruction has come, a very straightforward, direct instruction. No, hello, how are you, who are you, what's your name, where are you from? No. So the Guru has given direct instruction to the disciple even before they get to know each other. Usually our shastras say that Guru and disciple need to spend at least a year getting to know each other. But here there was no such waiting. So the question that Srila Prabhupada asked of his spiritual master is that we are so dependent on the British Raj. If we preach, who will take us seriously? First, we need in India, in order to be respected, must achieve independence before any Indian can go and preach abroad about the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Prabhupada waited for an answer, and immediately the response came. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, this Krishna consciousness movement is an emergency. It need not wait for a country to become independent. And then Prabhupada also, Saraswati Prabhupada told our Prabhupada that many governments, many leading institutions, they all mislead us down the wrong path. They trap you into this illusion of dharma, artha, kama. So if all the government and the institutions are complicit in taking the Jivatma further and further away from Krishna, then certainly it's an emergency. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings should be taken to the masses right now. It need not wait for India to achieve independence. So Prabhupada was very impressed and convinced by the direct, unvarnished instructions and explanations provided by his spiritual master on that day. But Prabhupada did not actually take it up immediately. The instruction had settled in his heart, but he thought to himself, I am a grihastha, I have young children. I mean, what can I do to take this knowledge across the world? So this was in 1922. So Prabhupada was busy with his work, raising his sons and daughters. 11 years later, in 1933, he took Diksha from his guru. And another 11 years later, in 1944, Prabhupada had moved from Kolkata to Prayag, to Jhansi, all related to his own business he had started. Well, once he was managing the other gentleman's business, things went wrong. There was accusation of, some mismanagement of business due to somebody else who was working under Srila Prabhupada. So he started his own pharmacy in Prayag. Then again, another 11 years later, so 1922, he meets his guru. 1933, he takes initiation. 1944, Prabhupada writes articles for his very first magazine called Back to Godhead. He wrote the articles in English and he would take it to the printer and get it published fortnightly. But Prabhupada did not have too many funds to print the books, to distribute the books. He had to go and do it all personally. So maintaining the publication was a big struggle for Prabhupada. But Prabhupada himself would edit it, he would type it, he would check the galley proofs, and then he would personally distribute individual copies. So you could say Prabhupada tried to implement the instructions of his spiritual master by publishing the first English magazine called Back to Godhead, meaning going back to Krishna. But what is astonishing is that when Prabhupada started the magazine in 1944, it started something phenomenal. Since then, the magazine has never stopped printing. So even today, the magazine gets published. Of course, today we have many, many preachers and senior devotees who write articles in the magazine. But so today, the magazine is run by disciples in the West, and this magazine is printed in many, many languages. 30 languages is what I understand. So that was in 1944. In 1947, 3 years later, his own god brothers, who were also disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, recognized that Srila Prabhupada was a very erudite man, very fixed up in philosophy, very devotional. So his own god brothers awarded him the title of Bhakti Vedanta in 1947. Then, a few years later, Prabhupada decided that I should take vanaprastha. He leaves his family behind in the care of his sons. So his wife was not left alone. His wife was handed over to his sons. And he moves to Vrindavan and dedicates his life now to the study of scriptures and writing commentary in English to all the Gaudiya Vaishnava literature. As a matter of fact, his own spiritual master predicted that one day all of the Gaudiya literature will be available all over the world, not just in English, but in many, many languages. That was fulfilled by Srila Prabhupada. So at the age of 54, Prabhupada moves to Vrindavan and he begins to write profusely. He begins to write commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. Canto 1 has 3 volumes. So he writes 3 volumes on Canto 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam, living in a very, very meager room. A room with a small window, no toilet, nothing. Just a room with a small desk in a very famous temple called Shri Radha Damodar Temple in Vrindavan. If you visit the temple, you can still go and see the room in which Prabhupada lived. Prabhupada was meditating on the instructions of his spiritual master because his spiritual master had told him to go to the West and preach in English. He was just wondering, how will I go there? Who will sponsor me? Will people really understand this philosophy? He had a lot of concerns, but he had absolute faith in the instructions of his spiritual master. So all he was thinking about was, how am I going to execute this? Because the instruction was clear. The instruction was not for Prabhupada to preach in India. The instruction was for Prabhupada to preach overseas. So as he was translating Srimad Bhagavatam shlokas to English and writing detailed commentary, Prabhupada would weep in the middle of the night over the samadhis of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami in the middle of the night, crying out to the predecessor Acharyas and begging them for their help and mercy so that he can fulfill the instructions of his spiritual master. Because Prabhupada did not know how this was going to come about, but he knew he needed the mercy of the Guru Parampara if he had to execute the instructions. So in 1959, Prabhupada takes sannyas. He actually did not want to take sannyas at all. But what had happened is that as Prabhupada was staying in Shri Radha Damodar temple, his spiritual master repeatedly came in his dream and told him to take sannyas. Prabhupada thought, I've lived a grihastha life. How can I take sannyas? And anyway, in Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara, historically, nobody took sannyas. They were all Babajis, which means they could be a grihastha, but they were also deep into scriptures and they were great preachers. They were also considered pure devotees, but not sannyasis. Of course, as we discovered yesterday, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself takes sannyas. It is actually said in Kali Yuga, you should not take sannyas. So anyway, in 1959, even with the encouragement of his senior god brothers, they also told him, see, if you want to preach, you need to be in a respectable position. And being a monk, being a sannyasi, would suit the preaching mission. Therefore, again, Prabhupada was not convinced, but because his guru had come in his dreams not once, not twice, 3 times and told him he has to take sannyas. So he takes sannyas in 1959. And then he writes his very first book besides the Srimad Bhagavatam. The first book that Prabhupada published was called Easy Journey to Other Planets. So then Prabhupada was thinking, how am I going to travel to the United States to do my preaching? So he decides to visit a very entrepreneurial lady who was in a top position. Her family owned the, was engaged in commercial shipping. So he goes and visits her in Mumbai, waiting for an audience with her. And he asks her, can you give me a ticket on your cargo ship? I would like to go to the United States to preach. And she laughed at him. She said, you're an old man. You've never ever been to the United States. Do you have any idea how cold it is there? You will die of cold. So she discouraged him. But somehow the other Srila Prabhupada convinced her. And reluctantly she agrees to give him a passage on their cargo ship called the Jaladuta. So Prabhupada now made arrangements. So he just took one small suitcase with Srimad Bhagavatam that he had translated and he had published, and his translation of the Bhagavad Gita with the commentary, a few clothes, some puffed rice, and boarded the ship in Kolkata. He meets his youngest son one more time before he gets ready to depart, but not anybody else. He just meets his youngest son, comes to meet him at the shipyard to see his father off. So Prabhupada was 69 years old when he boarded the ship. And as the ship came around the coast of Kerala and to the other side, Janmashtami was celebrated on the ship. Prabhupada made some nice bhoga offering and he distributed prasadam on the ship, which means Prabhupada turned 70 while he was on the ship. So by the time Prabhupada arrives in Boston, and as they are traveling through the Mediterranean, Prabhupada suffers 2 massive heart attacks. I was actually reading the diary of Prabhupada, where he says, I'm not sure if another one comes, I will survive. At that time, Prabhupada prays to Krishna and says, the instructions have been given to me by my spiritual master. So you let me know if this is something that, I will be able to fulfill or not. So after Prabhupada prayed that night, after 2 heart attacks on the ship, where he thought it's just impossible for him to be alive anymore if one more happens. The captain of the ship, who was interviewed much later, says he had never experienced such a smooth transition from, from Europe to the United States, to Boston. He had never seen such calm seas. So Prabhupada says, that's because Krishna took over the ship. This is the faith that great devotees have in the Lord. So Prabhupada has now embarked on a journey to fulfill the mission of his spiritual master. Now, yesterday when we were discussing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself made a prediction. So did Lord Nityananda. So did Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That his names will be chanted all over the world at some point in the future, and that a Senapati Bhakta, a senior Bhakta, would actually come and propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. That means 500 years before itself, this prophecy was made. That sometime in the future, a senior person, an elderly person, a devotee warrior will come and take the names of the Lord, the holy names of the Lord, take it all across the globe and make it very common to have Sankirtans on the road. So it was 1965. Prabhupada arrived in Boston, and he stayed briefly with a couple who had actually sponsored his visa. And then he decides, I cannot stay with the couple because how will I start my preaching if I'm staying with them? So from Philadelphia, Prabhupada moves to New York into a yoga studio where an Indian was conducting yoga classes. And later on, Prabhupada thought, but that gentleman's philosophy is completely different from Vaishnava philosophy. I cannot stay with him anymore, so I need to move out. Because if I have to preach, I will not be able to preach to his people who come to take yoga classes. I have to do this on my own. So Prabhupada found a small office to stay in. And then he begins to go out into a park called the Tompkins Park. Prabhupada had taken Kartal with him. And he starts singing the Hare Krishna Mahamantra sitting under a tree. So that tree is still there in that park. If you go to 26 2nd Avenue, there is a park called there, Tompkins Park. And in this way, Prabhupada started the Sankirtan movement in New York. So pretty soon, Prabhupada started attracting many, many youngsters, teenagers, mainly hippies, as he called them, because they were very unhappy with the American government for being engaged in an unnecessary war with Vietnam. And many youngsters were dying because the government had a draft in place, which means if you were able-bodied, you had to go and fight this war, never knowing if you will ever come back. So Prabhupada actually, it is said, went with just 40 rupees in his pocket. That would have been around $7 at that time. So the first year, which is 1965 to 1966, was extremely difficult for Srila Prabhupada. He had never experienced winter, never experienced snow. He was practically immobilized. He could not preach, he could not do anything because he wasn't sure who's going to help him, who's going to guide him. But he continued with his bhajan, he continued with his kirtan. It is only in 1966 July that the Sankirtan movement began. And within 1 year, in that same year also, in 1966, Prabhupada established and incorporated ISKCON in New York. So ISKCON actually took birth in New York because that's where the organization was created. Prabhupada creates a mission statement, a vision statement. He establishes the 7 purposes for which ISKCON was established and what is the mood and mission in which this institution should be run. So slowly, Prabhupada, in 1966, later in 1966, Prabhupada gave his first initiation to his American disciples. He taught them how to cook for Krishna. He taught them how to dress the deities, how to wake up early in the morning by 3:34, take a cold water bath, and be ready for Mangala Arati. So literally, Prabhupada converted the youngsters into top-notch devotees. Unheard of. These youngsters gave up eating meat. gave up smoking, alcohol, gave up illicit relations, woke up early in the morning, shaved their heads completely. They did whatever Prabhupada asked them to do. Because in Prabhupada, they found a beautiful, honest, upright, straightforward, grandfatherly figure that they could trust. Because they had so much distrust in their own parents and in the government, here they found someone who walked the talk. Whatever Prabhupada instructed, he followed it himself. If Prabhupada told them wake up early in the morning, Prabhupada was awake early in the morning. So whatever instructions Prabhupada gave them, after all, Prabhupada was 70, 71 now. And these were all youngsters, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, 20, 21, like that. So Prabhupada taught them how to set up a printing press, how to do publishing, how to set up a temple, how to worship the deities, how to go out and distribute books, how to make devotees. Prabhupada gave sannyas initiation to several of his disciples who were all very young, all Westerners. And in this way, Prabhupada and ISKCON simply exploded onto the scene. So generally, nobody knows anything about Srila Prabhupada, but they know a lot about Hare Krishna. Or if you tell them ISKCON, many people will know, I know what is ISKCON. But nobody knows who's the founder Acharya of ISKCON. So that is the humility of Srila Prabhupada, that he never put himself above the mood and vision of the movement. So Prabhupada wanted to introduce, as per the instructions of his spiritual master, the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu of to just be happy to chant, happy to honor prasadam, lead a very simple life, and focus your time on spiritual activities. Yes, work is important, but spend more time on spirituality. So in this way, Prabhupada traveled around the globe 12 times. And by the time Prabhupada returned to Vrindavan in 1977 to wind up his pastimes, 108 temples had been established, exactly as per the prediction of the astrologer. And as per the prediction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Prabhupada traveled across the globe, visiting almost every country, including Russia, Iran, South America, the Far East, like Japan, Australia, New Zealand, you name it, Prabhupada had visited every country, and somehow a temple was established there. The ISKCON temple was established there. So you could say this whole Sankirtan movement that was started by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took hold in the Western countries because of the immense sacrifice that Prabhupada had made at a ripe old age of 70. Even when he was in the US, he suffered 2 more heart attacks. And he was incapacitated for quite some time. At that time, luckily, he had disciples who took really good care of Prabhupada. Prabhupada hated being in the hospitals. In one such case, he was admitted to a hospital and they said, no, he has to have surgery. And Prabhupada said, no more needles, just get me out of here. So they had to fool the hospital and take away Prabhupada when nobody was looking, when there were no nurses in the room, there were no doctors around. Somehow they managed to get Prabhupada out of the hospital and they took him to Hawaii so that Prabhupada could recuperate from the heart attack that he had suffered. So it was November 14th, 1977 in Vrindavan, where Prabhupada wound up his pastimes. But by now, a large institution had been set. Prabhupada had, in that time frame of 1966 to 1977, Prabhupada had more than 5,000 disciples who he personally initiated. If you look at the number 5,000, that's a very large number. It's not a small number. How Prabhupada managed to run the operations of 108 temples while he was constantly traveling. His disciples did not know everything about management. They didn't know anything about how to manage a temple, how to raise funds, how to track finances. Prabhupada was meticulous in everything, meticulous in maintaining accounts, meticulous in maintaining temples in a very, very clean way. Prabhupada hated it when electricity would be wasted or water faucets are dripping. He would get very upset with his disciples. So they were much younger than Prabhupada. So even if Prabhupada scolded them and chastised them, they loved him so much. So it was actually his Western disciples who really took care of Prabhupada. They treated him like a living God for them. They were so inspired by Srila Prabhupada. What a simple life he led. Whatever funds were coming through book distribution, book publishing, book printing, etc., Prabhupada managed it so deftly, setting up a separate institution for printing so that it was separate from ISKCON. All of this Prabhupada did, including being taken to the courthouse by some parents who felt that their sons and daughters were being brainwashed by Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said in the courthouse, he said, "You please present Bhagavad Gita as my defense. You read the entire Bhagavad Gita to the judge. He will understand that, yes, I am engaged in brainwashing because you people have filled your children with all kinds of filth. So it's up to me who has to go in and clean it as the guru." So yes, Prabhupada says, yes, I am brainwashing the children. I'm cleaning them up so that they can go back to Krishna. So like this, Prabhupada established temples, gurukuls, farming societies, so that devotees could live as a community, just growing their own food, making their own clothes, and leading a very, very simple life, have their own cows, make delicious bhoga for Krishna, honor prasadam every day. Prabhupada also sent his disciples who were very young, and he said, you go to Japan, you go set up a temple. You go start Krishna consciousness there. You go to Pakistan and you set up Krishna consciousness there. These devotees and disciples of Prabhupada were so young, but they had so much faith. If Prabhupada said go, said it, they would just go. They would not say, Prabhupada, we can't do it. I don't know how, you please come with me. Prabhupada said, no, Krishna is there with you. My Guru Maharaj is there with you. You please go. Krishna will teach you how to do it. That's how phenomenally entrepreneurial Prabhupada was. Then, of course, Prabhupada comes back to set up his spiritual base in Mayapur. And in Vrindavan, Prabhupada establishes the Krishna Balaram temple. And in Mumbai, Prabhupada establishes the Juhu temple. And before he left, Prabhupada also established two more temples in India, one in Kolkata and the Abbot's temple in Hyderabad. So although Prabhupada was not physically present for the inauguration of the Juhu temple, the other four temples, the one in Vrindavan, Kolkata, and Hyderabad, were actually, the deities were installed by Srila Prabhupada. In Mayapur, the smaller deities were being worshipped, so it was not technically a formal temple, but Prabhupada did the ground-breaking ceremony and installed Anantashes deep into the ground, where the current temple is being constructed. It is under construction, almost done in Mayapur. So all that was done by Srila Prabhupada. So as you can imagine, such a personality is very, very rare. So you can understand through the life of Prabhupada, especially at the ripe old age, what he was able to accomplish, that he's not an ordinary personality, that he was sent by the Lord himself to implement and establish and propagate Krishna consciousness. So in this way, we can understand how great an Acharya Srila Prabhupada is. And Prabhupada has always said that his books will become the law books for the next 10,000 years. That's not an empty statement. So when Acharyas speak and when they make statements like this, you should understand the context in which it is being spoken. So Prabhupada said his books will become the law books for 10,000 years. Actually, the Krishna consciousness movement is itself predicted to go on for 10,000 years. So this is the nature of a pure devotee who is willing to go through any struggles in order to rescue even one Jivatma and connect them back to Krishna. So we'll stop here. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We can speak many volumes about Srila Prabhupada. We barely touched the surface. There's a beautiful movie on Srila Prabhupada. Maybe one day we can watch it. I have the video so that you can understand probably a little bit more color behind what all Prabhupada went through and what challenges he faced, how he overcame them, all of this. So at the age of 81, in the last 6 months, Prabhupada simply stopped eating. He said, I'm an old man now, and you youngsters have to take over the movement. Please cooperate very nicely. Don't fight amongst each other after I'm gone, because that's what normally happens. When an Acharya leaves, the devotees and the disciples get into disputes and arguments. So this is a very brief look into Srila Prabhupada's life and a very brief look at his challenges as well. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any questions or comments? No questions? Okay. So tomorrow, you can join us for our concluding chapter, chapter 18. And after that, we can talk about what's next after these 18 days. All right, thank you very much, devotees. Vancha kalpadarupyascha kripasindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Shri Gauranitai ki jai. Thank you very much. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you.